Welcome to this episode of HealthWise 360, a creation of Clarissa Burt, founder of In the Limelight Media. I'm your show host, CHRISSY Cordingley, and you'll be able to see this interview on In the Limelight TV, which is distributed on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and 100 other smart TV apps. The audio version of this interview, of course, can be heard wherever you listen to your podcasts. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to be interviewing Karen Owoc, who is a clinical exercise physiologist and cardiopulmonary rehabilitation at the Palo Alto VA Medical Center and works privately as a medical fitness trainer and plant-based nutrition consultant. She's a speaker on lifestyle medicine and has been the weekly TV health expert on KRON for news in San Francisco for the past 4.5 years, speaking on all aspects of healthy living in over 200 television interviews. Certified by the American College of Sports Medicine, Karen focuses on the fascinating findings of human longevity and centenarian lifestyle. Because of her love for sports and her family history of early onset heart disease and stroke, Karen focused on a career path where food and exercise are used to treat, manage, and prevent disease. And she just released her first book on functional longevity, Athletes and Aprons, the Nutrition Playbook to Break 100. Thank you so much for joining me today, Karen.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Chrissy.
We're very excited to speak. So first, I have to say that I love that your website is Karen for Your Health. I love word puns, and I think that is brilliant. Karen for Your Health. I love that so much. But maybe let's just start with sharing what a clinical exercise physiologist is, and maybe a little bit about your expertise and background in exercise and nutrition.
So I focus on the community that has medical conditions. So it's not like a personal trainer, that type of person that's in a gym. I'm focused on working in the hospitals, and like I do for the VA. My patients have multiple types of chronic conditions, everything from heart disease. My focus is heart disease. People with transplants had a heart attack, have had some type of surgery, and then also pulmonary disease, particularly COPD, emphysema, and trying to rehab them, bring them back to where they're very functional and have improved outcomes. My background, I've been doing this for many years, and I studied nutrition along with the exercise physiology and all when I was when I was first in college. But I realized I was an athlete at the time too, and I realized the connection between how I feel, how I performed with nutrition.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into a bit about longevity and nutrition and some specifics, but I'm a heart person, and you sent me your heart story today, the purpose of what you do and why you do it. But could you share the story possibly of your brother with our audience before we dive deeper into how we can age well?
Yeah, so I do have a family history of early onset heart disease and stroke. So I knew just when I was in college, I knew that I needed to do something in order to kind of overcome these genetic predispositions. So I chose to, focus on nutrition and health and exercise. My brother, we were both opposites growing up, and he had atherosclerosis, type 2 diabetes, abdominal obesity, all those things, all those lifestyle chronic diseases. And when he was 35, he had a heart attack. And fortunately, I was home at the time visiting, and he said, I have indigestion and all that, but I knew right away he was having a heart attack. And I called the paramedics, and he didn't want to go to the hospital. He said, call my doctor. I said, no, you need to go and he actually refused. He would not go with the paramedics. And the paramedics told me, we can't force him to go with us. So my dad ended up driving him, which is the worst mistake, because I've had patients who were driven to the hospital by their spouse, and they have cardiac arrest on the way to the hospital.
Yes.
Also, just as a note, if you go with the paramedics, they have the ability to call the hospitals and find out if the cath lab is open, and that they can bring a patient in and open up that artery. So if you are driving, you drive to a hospital and they say, our cath lab is full, we can't take you. So then you have to go somewhere else. So always go with the paramedics. So anyway, he did end up having a heart attack, what's called the LAD, which is widowmaker, is one that was affected. And he had a 4-way bypass.
Wow.
His recovery, and I was a perfect one to help him recover, because I was cardiac rehab. But being a family member, it was very difficult. And my patients, you can choose 2 ways to go in life. You could either choose to say, okay, I'm going to overcome this, I'm going to change, or you could go the easy route, saying, these are the cards I've been dealt, I'm just going to live my life the way I want. And that's what he did. I couldn't help him, and he ended up passing away at the age of 49.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, very, very too young. He's missed out on so much, and I really miss him.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a disease, right? Some of these chronic illness, well, they are a disease, but there's a lot of mental and other things that go into them. It's not so simple for everybody.
It's very much so. Especially with overeating, because I've dealt with a lot of patients with those eating disorders, and we wouldn't have an eating issue, or we wouldn't have a weight issue if we all ate when we were only hungry. But we don't do that. It's tied with emotions. So that emotional eating cycle, which is what drives people to eat. And it's difficult to break out of that.
And even if we're eating emotionally, we're not grabbing, our emotional bag of carrots or broccoli, right?
You're not grabbing broccoli. No, not at all. And it's the only way to break out of that emotional eating cycle. And I call it diet. Diets are what drive us to just make it worse, because diets lead to what I call the 3 Ds: deprivation, defeat, and then depression. And then you just get stuck in that cycle. And the only way out of that is to be cognizant that you're doing it. Because I have so many people tell me, I told myself I'm not going to eat the chips, I'm not going to eat the chocolate chip cookies, but I can't stop. And you first have to recognize why you're craving those foods. What are you doing? What are you feeling at that time? And then they start to see a pattern. They said, oh, I was really stressed at work, and I wanted those cookies. I was craving those cookies. Or I was very lonely, or I was very bored, and then I was craving these particular foods. So it really takes a lot of mental energy to figure this out.
It is a bit of a healing process to figure out what are some of the non-food sources of nourishment I'm lacking in. So I'm not feeling physically hungry, like maybe I just need a little more joy in my life, or I need to work on fixing a relationship, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's easier, right, to grab the food than to do some of those hard healing things. But it's so important, because we do want to live long lives and have what you call functional longevity. So what does it mean to you for us to be functional as we age?
So functional longevity there are three layers to that. So longevity is just living a long life. And first of all, to be live a functional life, first, you want to be able to do the things you need to do. So these are your activities of daily living. So being able to dress yourself, being able to shower and do all these things on your own. And then there's that second layer of do the things that you want to do, things that, and this is what I see in a lot of my patients, because a lot of my patients are Vietnam combat veterans. So they are really suffering from the effects of their experiences. And they will see these projects, they're in their home and they see these projects that they want to do, whether it's mowing the lawn or fixing the door, whatever. And they see that and it gets very depressing because they can't do those things that they want to do. And then the third thing is to be able to do the things you love to do. So these are those passionate things, things like if you love to ski or ride a bike or whatever it is, and be able to do those things. So functional longevity means you're able to do the things you need to do, you want to do, and that you love to do.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what disrupts that to us? So what disrupts healthy aging? Because we do see examples of people that definitely live incredibly active and long lives, but it isn't always the case, right? Is it, and you talked a little bit about this deck of cards, are we handed a certain genetic deck of cards to play with, or can we take some control over how well we age? What is the disruption factor and what are some things we can do to disrupt the disruption?
Well, we definitely have control, and that's what my book is all about. And taking control of how well you feel and how fast you age and how functional you're going to be in your 80s, 90s and beyond. So now going back to your original question.
What disrupts the healthy aging?
Three things.
Yeah.
Yes. First of all, diet, and then lifestyle, and positivity. So positivity is really important. And I can tell people, this is, these are the things that we need to focus on as far as eating and this exercise. But if you don't believe that you can do it, then it's not going to happen. So belief is a very important component of changing your lifestyle. I see it over and over again. And I always, and this is what was great about when people have a community and they all are trying to make those changes together. It really helps because they see someone else doing it. I'm like, oh, she can actually do it. I think I can too. So that belief in yourself, that and really drives you to commit and follow through.
Absolutely. And I mean, and that's really cognitive behavior therapy, right? What you think is what's going to create how you feel, and how you feel is how you're going to behave. So exactly. It's absolutely true.
It all goes back to the brain.
It does.
The emotional eating and the belief that you can do it.
And it's funny because when it comes to health and wellness, right, a lot of us focus, or even if we see magazines on the stand still, I can't believe print magazines are still around, but they are, we see just pictures of bodies and everything is very physical, right? It's all about the food and the body and the exercise, but there is such a mental and emotional component, and the brain is its own organ that does need its own exercise as well. Absolutely. So what are things we can look for in ourselves to identify when we are perhaps not functionally fit, or maybe we're not aging as well as we could? And how do we start the journey to becoming functionally fit? Is there ever a point of no return, or can we start anytime in life?
Oh gosh, you could start anytime. I've had patients come to me at 92 that show improvement. So what I do is I test my patients. I do a functional test. And the first thing I always start out with is balance. If you don't have good balance, you're not going to be a really good walker. And if you can't ambulate well, then you're going to be functionally dependent. You're going to need someone to help you get around and walk around. You're going to need a walker or wheelchair eventually, and need someone to push you. So yeah, we always start out with balance and testing and see how well a person can stand on one leg for a period of time. And there's a study done in Japan that they found that if a person cannot stand on one leg for at least 20 seconds, that there's an association with microbleeds in the brain, cognitive decline. So it's a really interesting study. So I always focus on balance, because that tells me a lot, not just about the physicality, but also what's going on that possibly in the brain too.
Mm-hmm. So if we have people at home that are what are some of the earlier signs that they can start to notice at home to maybe reach out for support before it gets to the point of, wow, I am really losing balance or losing mobility, or I've lost a lot of function? What are some of the early signs that we can be like, oh, I maybe should pay a little more attention to my lifestyle?
Right. So tripping, and people may not necessarily fall, but kind of those little stumbles, which people don't always, they just say, oh, I just tripped on something, but those are things that I feel are really notable. And those are the things I always ask my patients every week. Did you fall? Did you stumble, or what? A lot of people, and this is why it's very important to test your own balance, and because you cannot, a lot of people don't even recognize it. This is what I hear all the time. Whenever I test, what happened to my balance? I mean, they are shocked. I will tell you, Chrissy, 98% of the time they tell me what happened to my balance. First of all, I always ask them, well, how do you think you are, stability wise and balance? Have you fallen? Oh, no, it's good. And when I test them, they just are shocked. So I think for the person at home, test your balance. And the way you do that is you cross your arms so that your wrists are crossed across your chest, and then stand on one leg and raise the other leg so that the leg is about parallel to the floor. So it's raised at a 90-degree angle, and see how long you can hold that position. Hopefully for at least 20 seconds, but you can start working on, if you don't, then there are ways that you can start strengthening and working on balance to start. But that's a good starting point, just to see, where you are. Because if you don't have good balance, you're not going to be very efficient at doing some of the other exercises that need to be, just the walking, like I said.
And you're going to be prone to incidents and injuries, right? Because you could fall over, or you could bump into something, and all those things. So,
and climbing upstairs, that requires standing on one foot, bringing the other one up. So if you find yourself doing the two-step, taking a step, bring the other one, then that's another clue. Oh, or climbing up sideways up the steps. So that's another clue that you're losing the balance. Shuffling of the feet. And if you're not comfortable on one foot, I mean, that's what walking is: taking a step, lifting the other leg up. It's in flight, and then you drop the other one down. When you see the shuffling of the feet, then people aren't comfortable on one foot. So that's another sign to look for.
It's a good indicator. Thank you. So your book is called Athletes in Aprons, and I love that you have a unique definition of what the word athletes means to you. So can you share what that is and why this book is great for anybody wanting to feel and live better?
So athletes, I use that term because anyone could be an athlete. We always think of the athletes, as being a very exclusive group, but it is actually very inclusive, because we have athletes are, it's not about how well you perform, or it's not about the uniform that you wear. It's all about how hard you persevere, and in wanting to be better than you were yesterday, and to keep striving and striving to finish. And that's what, to me, is the definition of an athlete. You can be a cancer survivor, a cardiac patient, the back of the packer. Those are all athletes, and they should not be dismissed or feel like they're not part of that group. So that's why I called it Athletes in Aprons.
And what oh, sorry, go on. No, you go ahead.
It's also it's written in kind of a sports speak, so it kind of goes along with the whole the way I kind of laid out the book with my coach notes. So this is the book, and it's a very easy read. I have my coach notes on the side. So I've worked with mostly men because in cardiopulmonary rehab, because women generally don't survive a heart attack. So most of the people in cardiac rehab are men. So I learned through all my experiences that men don't really like to read health books. But when I was in the hospital setting, I used to have like a whiteboard and bullet points every week. And boy, they used to love coming and reading the board, asking questions. And I realized, well, men are very interested in this health information, but it has to be digestible and easy to read. And so that's how I laid out the book. So it's appealing to whenever a man tells me, "Oh, I couldn't put your book down," then I go, bingo, that was exactly the objective.
It's a playbook. Absolutely. They love strategy, strategy, absolutely. And humor. Definitely, definitely. You said something, women generally don't survive heart attacks. Can you tell me why that is?
Yeah, women tend to have their heart attacks later in life. So they have other chronic conditions tied into that. So that makes it harder for them to survive any kind of surgery treatment. But the thing is, women have very different symptoms than a man. When it comes to a heart attack, women tend to have maybe indigestion, and they have back pain. The women that I've treated in cardiac rehab, they said they had no idea they were having a heart attack. They thought, oh, I must have been vacuuming too much. My back was aching. The other thing with women, so they generally don't have chest pain like that what men, those classic symptoms. So it's dismissed. And the other thing with women, they tend to be nurturers. So they don't tend to really take note of what's going on, and they put it off thinking, oh, it's nothing. They have other things to do. They have to tend to the families and do all that. So they don't go into the hospital right away. There's a very small window of time that you need to go in and get that artery opened in order to not suffer permanent heart damage. Most women take 56 hours before they actually go in to see a physician about their condition. And they don't generally will go to the ER. They'll make an appointment or whatever. So they have very extensive heart damage, and they're older, other chronic conditions, so they generally don't survive. Okay. So awareness for women is very important.
Yes, to identify the signs, but also the risk factors, right? So nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, stress, all those things that are really important too.
And family history, they found that women that have a family history, like their mother had a stroke, they also see that in the daughters, that they have a higher risk of stroke as well as a heart attack. And that's an increased risk of death too. Yes. So even more important to take the steps, right? To prevent as much as possible. So your Athletes and Aprons, tell us a little bit about what's inside. So you talk about your strategies and coaching strategies, but it's largely based on plant-based nutrition, right? So you're teaching people how to eat more plants. Can you share a little bit about the benefit of plants for cardiac health? So I go in the first few chapters, I go into the foundational science of why we age, because I found out when people understand the whys, then they're more apt to take steps. They would always tell me, oh, okay, the light bulb goes off. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then that makes it easier to say, I don't want that, I'll take this. So we go into the foundational science, and then there's so many, well, you're probably also familiar with all the phytonutrients that are found in plant-based foods. I do encourage some fish, but it's basically fish plus lots of plants.
Mhm.
And plants, all the different colors, because all the colors are tied in with the different phytonutrients. So eating a very colorful diet. I had one patient who told me, you wouldn't believe, I was at the store, because I always tell him about the colors. He goes, I had all the colors and went through the produce. I had this great colorful basket of fruits and vegetables. And he said, a lady came up to me and said, wow, you have a very pretty basket. So, and actually that's what we want. We want, forget the stuff that comes out of the boxes, but going to the produce section and really focusing on all those reds and greens and purples and oranges. So you'll get the most bang for your buck. You'll get all those phytonutrients that help to help you with anti-aging versus
Absolutely. I've heard that a lot of some certain phytonutrients can actually really smooth the muscle in the heart, that there is like a real cardiac benefit to that. Like that's what some of these plant foods can do. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but
as far as actually smoothing the muscle, I haven't heard that, but it does have it has benefits. One of the things that one of the biggest culprits when someone asks me, what's the worst food that I could have? When it comes to aging, and I said, sugar. All those sugary coated foods, the cookies and the cereals and all, because sugar binds with protein. And one of the most abundant and longest living proteins in your body is collagen. The collagen, the stuff you see in the beauty counter and in the jars, and this is going to make your skin look great. So collagen, when it binds with collagen, it forms what's called cross-link proteins, and it comes very stiff. And when, I don't think people realize that collagen just not in your skin, but it's in your tissues, it's in your heart, it's in your arteries, it's in your joints and muscles. So if you've eaten, if you lived a life of eating sugar, lots of sugar all your life, it's not going to be surprising that by the time you're in your 60s, that you are very stiff. You wake up, your body is stiff, especially if you haven't been exercising as well. But you'll also notice it in your face too, more wrinkles. So it's what I always say is what you eat becomes a part of you.
You are absolutely what you eat. I mean, that's it's true. And what led you to write this book?
Well, because of the fact that I just had all this information and working with patients, and it's so hard to get all that in just a few, a few sessions. And I thought it's so much more relevance to the patient if they're able to thumb through it. Some of the chapters are standalone, so it's not like you have to read chapter 1 and go through every chapter. You could skip around and feel, look at what's relevant to you, and just have something tangible, something that they can hold in their hand and look up. I have some people that say, this is my Bible, and it's a man too.
Yeah.
this is my nutrition Bible. And I go, oh, that's great. So something that they can have and be a great resource to people. And my objective is to give people hope, and because and that there is hope. And when they are feeling bad, when they feel like, oh, is this the way I'm going to be living the rest of my life? No, that's not. You do have control over how you feel and how you're going to feel. Making these changes, I've seen incredible changes in just 4 weeks. I actually had a woman that could barely walk into the facility. She was so ridden with arthritis, and she was just walking in so tenderly, and I couldn't even get the treadmill slow enough for her to be on it. So in 4 weeks, she changed her. She went totally plant-based. She stopped eating the sugars, stopped eating all those saturated fats. That's another culprit. And my goodness. And then working with her on the exercise 3 days a week, she changed in 4 weeks. So it was incredible to see. She came bouncing in and she hopped on the treadmill, and she was my star, because I think what an amazing tribute to the diet, the lifestyle, and her commitment to being better. I mean, it changed her life completely. And I actually had one man that came in. We used to test their blood before they came in. He came in, and the phlebotomist came to me and said, "Look at this. His blood was pink. It was pink. It's supposed to be red." But it was pink. It went as thick, and it was pink. It was so laden with fat in the blood.
Oh, wow.
And you can imagine if your heart is trying to pump this very thick blood throughout your system, your blood's not going to last. Your heart's not going to last. It's definitely going to give out. And as well as some of the other organs, they're just not going to get good perfusion, good blood flow to the brain, and also all to your working organs. So, but 4 weeks, just commit to 4 weeks, and you'll see some change. It just takes, that positivity that you can do it, and then you can make that change.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love how positive you are about the changes. And I'm sure that your patients must adore you. And that's why you're doing so well. And I'm excited to read your book. Is there anything else you would like to leave our audience with before we wrap up for today?
Well, my message is all about how to live longer without growing older. So live a long life, but that doesn't necessarily live to 100 plus. But you don't necessarily have to act like 100-year-old. I think they say 80 is the new 60. And my motto is, your age is a given, but growing old is a choice. So if we eat well, live a healthy lifestyle, we stay very positive, that we can live long and without being old.
Perfect. And where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon, as well as Barnes and Noble, Walmart, wherever books are sold. But Amazon would probably be the best. Well, I don't want to say that, but Amazon, just as a side note, Amazon tends to put books on sale, and my book's on sale. I never know when it's going to be. So they're kind of like the best, the best bargain. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your great energy and sharing such great information. And we really appreciate having you on the show. And we'll make sure that everybody has your contact information in the show notes. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you, Karen.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Chrissy.